This video is another video that should initially at least start off as a review. Everybody should be familiar how to graph a line, or if we had a line that was graphed, how to get that same information from it to write the equation of the line. So our first example is all review, and then the next three examples we'll kind of get into, well, how are we going to apply this to the fact that now we have three different forms for linear equations. So for this first example, we have to graph the line y equals 3/4 x minus 3. So we should remember that we can get the slope and we can get the y-intercept from this form. So the slope is the number that's multiplied by x. So in this case, it's going to be 3/4. And the y-intercept is represented with b, and it's the number that's added or subtracted onto the end. So if it's subtracted, that means my y-intercept is a -3. One way that I heard it a couple years ago is we begin with b and then we move according to the slope, according to m. So we are going to first graph our y-intercept, because in order to graph a line, you have to know where a point on that line is. And so that's what our y-intercept is. We know that this line is going to cross right here. And if we know the slope, we know where to move from there. So we know that from this point, we're going to go up 3 and over 4. If you ever find yourself not being able to move like up and over or down and to the right, remember that you can always do the reverse. I could move -3 and -4, which would still give me an overall positive slope, because a negative divided by a negative is a positive. So once I have a few points marked out from the slope, I am going to connect them, and no promises on how well I'm going to be able to do on the screen here. I have rulers in the classroom because I do expect your lines to be fairly neat on paper, but I don't have an online ruler that I can use. So I would prefer it actually go through the points. Again, I apologize. We always want to put arrows on both ends because it's not a segment, it is a line. It extends forever in both directions. So that is the graphing of lines that everybody should have seen in previous years. Now let's get into the new stuff. So this is in standard form. Standard form isn't the best for being able to graph. So the best thing that we can do is solve this equation for y, and then once it's solved for y, it'll be in slope-intercept form, and we're just going to do what we did over here. So to solve for y, we need to move the x term to the other side. That is going to result in 3y is equal, again, I'm going to rearrange and put the x first, so -2x. This is a +6, so +6. Now I need to get rid of the coefficient on the y, so I'm going to divide everything by 3. Now I know we don't love fractions, but fractions aren't an issue with slope. Fractions actually make slope easier because it tells us exactly how much rise and how much run we have. So the 3's cancel out, and we get that y is equal to -2/3. We're going to leave it as a fraction. It's not a fraction that can simplify, so we're leaving it just like that. And then 6 divided by 3 is 2, and that one we do need to simplify. So this line has a slope of -2/3, and it has a y-intercept of +2. So we're going to begin with our y-intercept at 2. And we're going to move with our slope of down 2, down because it's negative, and to the right 3. And I can repeat that for as much graph space as I have. I can also take it in the other direction. I can move positive y direction, negative x direction, if I wanted to, all the way across the graph. But if you have a ruler, you probably won't find that you need to make all 5 points. And now I'm going to do my best attempt at a straight line. Don't forget the arrows on the end, and I'm done. So that is graphing a line from standard form. Make sure you put it in slope-intercept form first, then it's just a review. Our last two examples are in point-slope form. And the good news here is that we don't have to solve for y. We don't have to rearrange this and put it in slope-intercept form, because I can get the slope and I can get a point on the line. It's okay that that point isn't the y-intercept. It doesn't have to be the y-intercept. It just has to be a point on that line. So for this first one, I know that my slope is -2. The slope is always the number in front of the parentheses there with the x plus or minus a value. And I do want to remember that because the equation is y minus the y value and x minus the x value, I do have to kind of flip the signs. So when I go to figure out the point here, for the x value, this is actually going to be an x value of -3 because minus the -3 is what turned that to addition. So flipping that sign. And the same thing happened with the y. So this had a y value of -2, and when I subtracted the negative, it flipped it to addition. So I'm going to begin with this point, not the y-intercept, and then I'm still going to use my slope to move. Whenever you have a slope that's a whole number, just remember that that's the same thing as that whole number over 1. So for this one, I'm going down 2 over 1, and I can repeat that in either direction until I have enough points to feel confident in my ability to draw a straight line. So now I'm going to connect my points. Oh goodness, not doing a good job on this one. Sorry guys. In class, definitely use your rulers. They help. Arrows on the end, and I'm done. So point slope form sometimes is a little difficult. It's a little harder to remember, but as far as graphing goes, it's nice and easy. I have one more in point slope form. So looking at this right here, this is the same thing as a -1. So our slope is -1. And when we go to do the rise and the run, that's going to be -1 over -1. The point is going to be -6 because it's going to have the opposite sign. And since this is -3, it's going to be a +3. So I'm going to graph the point -6, 3, and I'm going to use my slope of -1, remembering that that's -1 over 1, so down 1 over 1, to graph some more points, that one didn't take, on this line. Again, I'm going to go all the way across the graph because it's really hard to graph without a ruler. Connect the dots, extending beyond. Whoops. Sorry about that. And arrows on the end. And there's our line. So make sure you get some practice with graphing lines. You are going to be expected to graph on your quiz and your test. And then this is video D, so you only have one more lesson after this.